What's shaking? Here, that isn't just a casual greeting. It's a legit geologic question. If the rocks behind me could talk, they would tell you about the 1 minute that changed everything, when in 1906, the ground shifted just 20 feet and brought an entire metropolis to its knees. Welcome to the Rock Record. Let's talk rocks. All right, if you haven't figured it out yet, this week on the Rock Record, we are exploring one of America's most iconic cities, where two tectonic plates have been in this kind of slow motion wrestling match for millions of years. Today, we're exploring what geologists call the San Andreas Fault, the boundary between two massive tectonic plates that's responsible for San Francisco's most dramatic terrain and seismic history. This geological feature isn't just a scientific curiosity. It's shaped the region's development and continues to influence how people build and live here today. The San Andreas Fault is one of the most famous geological features in the entire world, a crack in the Earth's crust that runs 800 miles through California. It's the boundary between two massive tectonic plates, and it's responsible for some of the most powerful earthquakes in American history. Before we dig into the rocks beneath our feet, let's travel back in time to understand how the San Andreas Fault revealed itself to the world. While indigenous people had experienced earthquakes for centuries, it was one catastrophic morning in 1906 that brought this geological giant into scientific focus. At precisely 5:12 a.m. on April 18, 1906, San Francisco was jolted awake by what would become one of the most significant earthquakes of all time. After a smaller initial shake, called a foreshock, the great earthquake broke loose about 20 to 25 seconds later. For 45 to 60 seconds, violent shocks rocked the city and the surrounding region. People felt this earthquake from southern Oregon to south of Los Angeles and as far inland as central Nevada. While we often call it the San Francisco earthquake, the shaking damage was equally severe in many other places along the fault rupture. And those frequently cited figures of 700 deaths, modern researchers now believe that underestimates the total loss of life by a factor of 3 or 4. It wasn't until after this catastrophic event that scientists discovered what we now know as the San Andreas Fault. They carefully plotted where it runs and found that the ground west of it had moved north during the earthquake as much as 22 feet in some places. I am here at Mission San Juan Bautista, the 15th of the chain of California missions, established in 1797. But what makes this site interesting, especially as a geologist, isn't just its amazing history. It is what is beneath our feet. This beautiful mission sits right on top of the San Andreas Fault. San Juan Bautista marks the southern end of the fault's rupture in the great 1906 earthquake. But the mission's relationship with earthquakes goes back much further. In October of 1798, just 1 year after the mission was founded, the shaking was so violent that missionaries here spent a month sleeping outside. They experienced as many as 6 tremors per day, which caused ruptures in the ground as well as cracks in the building itself. So behind me here, you will see this kind of straight line in the landscape below the mission. In nature, perfectly straight lines are extremely rare. This is usually indicative of a fault. What we're looking at here is the surface expression of the San Andreas Fault itself. So what exactly is the San Andreas Fault? This is the meeting of two tectonic plates. Tectonic plates are basically giant pieces of the Earth's crust that are constantly on the move and shifting. You may have heard of Pangea, or different continents and land masses breaking apart. That's due to tectonic plates. And this right behind me is where two of them are meeting up. Right here, I am standing on the Pacific Plate, and this field over here is the North American Plate. The San Andreas Fault is what geologists call a transform or strike-slip boundary. So this means that the two tectonic plates are moving horizontally against each other in kind of this motion. Not back and forth, they're just moving. In the craziest turn of events, I'm able to show you what this actually looks like, because during the 2025 Myanmar earthquake, this movement was caught on camera for the first time ever. It is honestly so cool. Be sure to keep a close eye on that right side here. There are other faults and types of plate boundaries, but we won't get into all of those in this video. Now, this is just one section of this giant fault. The San Andreas Fault runs about 800 miles through California, starting near the Salton Sea in the south and running through Cape Mendocino in the north, off into the Pacific Ocean where we can't see it anymore. We can generally divide it into 3 different sections: the northern, central, and southern San Andreas. Very originally named, as I always like to say. Now, what's pretty fascinating is that this fault is actually pretty young in age. The crucial moment in its history started about 20 million years ago, during the Miocene. That is when this strike-slip, this horizontal motion of the 2 plates started. The Pacific Plate is slowly moving northwest, carrying Los Angeles, Monterey, and eventually this mission with it, at a rate of about 1 to 1.5 inches per year. Despite sitting on top of one of the world's most famous fault lines and used almost continuously since 1812, this mission has never been completely toppled by an earthquake, which is pretty remarkable when you think about how long it's been here and through how many giant earthquakes it's seen. Here's another fascinating intersection of geology and history. This dirt road here may look unassuming, but it's actually part of the El Camino Real, the famous King's Highway that once connected all 21 of California's missions for over 650 miles. At this spot, it happens to run directly on top of the San Andreas Fault. Imagine the thousands of travelers who walked this route over the centuries, completely unaware that they were crossing one of Earth's major tectonic boundaries with each step. The El Camino Real, or the King's Highway, is a perfect example of how geology and human history intertwine in unexpected ways. What I find really interesting, and is totally on my bucket list, is the North American plate actually starts in Iceland. You probably have seen those pictures or videos of Thingvellir, I have no idea how to pronounce it, where you can actually snorkel between tectonic plates, etc. This plate boundary isn't quite as exciting as that, but it's still pretty cool. The San Andreas Fault is one of the rare places in the world that you can see and touch a tectonic plate boundary. A lot of them are in the ocean, so you can't really get to them, or they're relatively inaccessible. But this one right here is in California's backyard. Now, obviously, I've spent a lot of time in California, so I've definitely driven across it and stuff, but this is my first time to really stop and see an expression of the San Andreas Fault, which is so cool. There are a couple other places in California that you can do this though, and actually see the shifting that it's done over the years. Oh, don't mind me, just walking along one of the most famous and possibly most dangerous fault lines in the US. Don't tell my mom. I hope I'm not here when it comes loose. I spend most of my life on the North American plate, so I'm not gonna jump across all this foliage to go touch the North American plate. Instead, I'm gonna enjoy my time here on the Pacific plate, because how cool is this? While the surface expression of the San Andreas Fault at Mission San Juan Bautista gives us a visual understanding of this geological giant, there's nothing quite like feeling the power of an earthquake firsthand. But since waiting around for the next big one isn't practical or safe, San Francisco offers visitors the next best thing. The one time I'm not wearing my work boots, maybe that would have done it. Just helping relieve some of the stress here with some little mini microquakes. So when you're visiting San Francisco, you may not get to experience an actual earthquake. And honestly, for your sake, I kind of hope you don't. But today we're going to figure out what one feels like here at the California Academy of Sciences Shake House exhibit. So let's go check that out. We are going to step in a simulator that will take me back in time to 2 of San Francisco's biggest earthquakes. I'm hoping this exhibit will literally rock my world. Okay, so there's a lot of cool exhibits here, but we are here to see one thing. We'll probably check out the others though, too. The Shake House lets visitors experience both the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake, a 6.9 magnitude, and the much more powerful 1906 earthquake, a 7.9 magnitude. The difference between these 2 events is dramatic and reminds us why the 1906 quake was so devastating to the city.
As the Loma Prieta earthquake Stra. In this Victorian house, let's imagine San Francisco more than 100 years ago, in 1906. After the gold rush, the population boomed in the span of a few short decades. At 5:12 a.m., the city began to wake as the shaking began. Fire broke out, burning 28,000 buildings to the ground, including the original Academy building located downtown.
That really gives you a sense of appreciation of the magnitude of these events. And remember, the 1906 earthquake lasted for almost a full minute, so much longer than the simulation. Kind of made me a little sick to my stomach. After experiencing a simulation of the raw power that earthquakes unleash, it's time to get some perspective. To truly understand how the San Andreas Fault has shaped this region, we need to see the big picture. Twin Peaks, rising nearly 1,000 feet above the city, offers the perfect vantage point to observe San Francisco's unique geological setting. The famous hills of San Francisco that I'm standing on here aren't just picturesque. They are the result of millions of years of geologic forces shaping this entire region. What makes this area particularly fascinating geologically is how the different ground types are affected by the shaking of earthquakes. During the 1906 earthquake, scientists noticed a clear correlation between shaking intensity and the underlying geology. Areas built on soft, water-saturated sands and sediments shake much more violently than areas on solid bedrock. The strongest shaking occurred in areas where ground reclaimed from San Francisco Bay failed during the earthquake. This understanding is now fundamental to modern building codes and city planning. From this vantage point up here, we can see how San Francisco has modernized and adapted to living in earthquake country. Modern buildings now have earthquake codes that were implemented in 1933 that they have to follow here. Today's structures in earthquake-prone regions incorporate special design elements like flexible foundations and reinforced connections that help buildings move with the earth rather than fight against it. Even the iconic Golden Gate Bridge was built with earthquakes in mind. Whether or not you live in an area that's known for earthquakes, being prepared isn't just smart, it's essential. The most important thing to remember during an earthquake is drop, cover, and hold on. Drop to the ground before the earthquake drops you. Take cover under a sturdy desk or table if possible, and hold on until the shaking stops. If you're indoors, stay there until the shaking stops. If there isn't a table nearby, move to an inside wall or corner away from windows and cover your head. If you're outdoors, move to an open area away from anything that could fall. A basic earthquake kit should include water, non-perishable food, a flashlight, emergency radio, first aid kit, medications, and warm clothing. Most people don't realize that earthquakes can happen almost anywhere in the world, not just in California. Many of the most devastating earthquakes happen in places where they are rare, because buildings aren't designed to withstand them and people aren't prepared. Looking at San Francisco's beautiful skyline, it's easy to forget the powerful forces beneath our feet. The 2015 film San Andreas may have taken some creative liberties with the science, but as USGS seismologist Lucy Jones noted, it did get one thing absolutely right: the emotions and human experience during a disaster. That is why preparation matters more than panic. Most people don't think about the San Andreas Fault during their daily lives, but geologists and city planners certainly do, designing buildings and infrastructure to withstand the earthquakes that will inevitably come. Unlike the movies, we can't predict exactly when the next major earthquake will strike, but through science and preparation, we can be ready when it does. The San Andreas has been quiet in recent decades, but many parts of it are stuck, and they're building up stress like a coiled spring. Or like me on a Monday. Eventually, all of that will come loose in one giant earthquake, often called the big one. And I hope I'm not here when it happens. As we wrap up our geological journey here in San Francisco, I'm reminded that what makes the city so special isn't just its unique landmarks or cultural scene. It's the stories written in stone beneath our feet. Feeling an earthquake is still on my geological bucket list, although I would prefer it to be a small one, not the big one that we're waiting on here. However, while I'm waiting, I will keep exploring the stories written in historic earthquakes and being prepared for the next one. Have you ever experienced an earthquake? Let me know in the comments below so I can live vicariously through you. And as always, if you liked this episode of The Rock Record, please like the video, subscribe, and stay tuned for future adventures from geological places across the world. Until I see you next time, keep exploring the stories written in stone. Or in faults. And in case you're wondering, yes, I did drive an hour and a half out of my way just to look at this line of bushes. It's geology for you. It's exciting stuff.